Good evening. It's a pleasure being back here. I want to thank Sasha for organizing this conference yet again. It's a big effort and we really, really do appreciate it. And we hope we can see everybody back here next year. So my talk today is about the Banu Abil-As and early claims to right authority. And this talk begins with a coin that everybody's seen before. This is a coin of Al-Ḥakam bin Abil-As, who was a governor in Kerman and struck coins like this from approximately 675 to 678. And what's interesting about these coins are, we have a marginal legend right here, Bismillah Rabb al-Ḥakam, or Rabb al-Ḥukm. This is a coin that's elicited a great deal of interest. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of confusion over exactly who Al-Ḥakam bin Abil-As is. We know from the coins that he's a ruler in Kerman between 685 and 687. John Walker identified him with Al-Ḥakam bin Abil-As bin Umayyah. So he was a member of the Umayyad family. At least 3 other people have independently identified him with Al-Ḥakam bin Abil-As bin Bishr al-Thaqafi. So with the same name and patronymic, but belonging to an entirely different tribe. And several other people have continued to describe Al-Ḥakam bin Abil-As as a Kharijite, a possible Kharijite, and have often said that we don't really know who he is. So I would like to set the record straight, and I would like to also show you that his familial background helps explain the kind of legend that he has on his coins. We actually know quite a lot about Al-Ḥakam bin Abil-As. There's at least 10 or 12 sources, classical Arabic sources that talk about him and his family. So he has a very long genealogy here. Al-Ḥakam bin Abil-As bin Bishr bin Dohman bin Abdullah bin Dohman bin Yasar bin Malik bin Hotayt bin Jusham bin Qasi bin Munabbih al-Thaqafi. The important thing, and this goes back about 12 generations, the important thing is he belongs to the branch, the Malik bin Hotayt bin Jusham. So the Banu Thaqif were largely situated in the city of Ta'if. And in the city of Ta'if, there were 2 branches. He belonged to one of the branches. The main branch controlled the city, the religious sites. He belonged to the branch that controlled the outskirts of the city. And the second thing that is important to note about this genealogy is his grandfather Bishr married into the Umayyad family. And he married the daughter of Abil-As bin Umayyah. So now we go to the Umayyad genealogy, and you can see I have Abil-As bin Umayyah circled at the top. And in the Umayyad family, he was actually the most important forebear. He is the father of Al-Ḥakam, and Al-Ḥakam was the father of the Caliph Marwan. And then you can see in the blue, all the different caliphs that descended from that lineage. You can also see in green, Uthman, that is Uthman bin Affan. He was the 3rd rightly guided caliph, so he was also very important. So this was like the most important lineage inside the Umayyad family. To the left, we have the Harb and then the Abu Sufyan, the Sufyanids, and they produced the caliphs Muawiyah, Yazid, and then briefly Muawiyah II. So they were also important. What's kind of interesting is Abil-As, the phrase Abu al-As suggests that he had a son named Al-As. In fact, he never had a son named El-As. It was a nickname that he acquired because he was the older brother to his brother El-As. And because he spent so much time with his little brother, people started calling him Abul As. Okay. So you want to remember that whenever you read a name, there may be a story behind it that's different from the one that you think. Now, here is Abul As al-Umayyi's immediate family. I have in the circle Abul As al-Umayyi, and then in colored font, I have his wives. And he had 6 wives that I know about. And the 3 most important were from the Banu Rabi'a, the Banu Adi, and the Banu Makhzum. And if you know the politics in Mecca at that time, the Banu Makhzum were like the most important clan. They were before in pre-Islamic times, they were more important than the Umayyads or the Banu Hashim. The Banu Rabi'a were also important, and the Banu Adi were important. They were located largely outside of Mecca. Now, I have a list of all the children that he has, and I have about 10 children there. And I have, as best as possible, who they got married to. Now, I'm not worried about whether it's a wife or a husband, but 6 out of the 10 children of Abul As married into the Banu Thaqif. All right. That's an enormous number of people to marry into another tribe. If you remove the wife from the Banu Adi, you find 6 out of 7 children married into the Banu Thaqif. Now, we don't know all the reasons why, but in the pre-Islamic period, the decades before the Prophet Muhammad, many people in the Quraysh were acquiring property on the outskirts of Ta'if. And so they were developing closer relations with the people in Ta'if, probably commercial ties, and it would make sense. However, the very large number of children that married into the Banu Thaqif is very significant. Now, Al-Ḥakam, which is the person with whom Al-Ḥakam bin Abi al-As al-Thaqafi was initially confused, he actually was an enemy of the Prophet, and he was exiled at the when the Prophet conquered Mecca. And when he was exiled, he went to Ta'if. Okay, and it's clear why. That's where he had family. And he was sometimes referred to derisively as Al-Ḥakam al-Thaqafi. All right, he was actually Al-Ḥakam al-Umayyi. Well, to call somebody Al-Ḥakam al-Thaqafi, you know, by a different tribal name, that's kind of a bit of an insult. But there was a basis for it. You know, he was married to somebody from the Banu Thaqif, and his siblings were as well. Now, he had a sister, Rayhana, okay, who also married into the Banu Thaqif. And she married Bishr, the grandfather of Al-Ḥakam bin Abi al-As in Kirman. Now, here's a kind of a next generation look at this. So you can see Rayhana here, and she married Bishr, who I just listed as Banu Thaqif, and they had a son, Abul As. And the question is, again, when you hear the name Abul As, you think, okay, he must have had a son, Al-As. I've seen no record of any son of his named Al-As, but I do find names of Uthman, Al-Ḥakam, Al-Mughira, Abu Umayyah, Abu Amr, and Hafs. And if you look at these names and compare them to some of the names that you have for Rayhana's siblings, you find Al-Ḥakam and Al-Mughira are names that were Rayhana's siblings, that they're also being duplicated among the grandchildren. And you find Uthman, that's a name of his cousin over here, or half cousin, who became caliph. So it's possible that the name Abu al-As, the son of Rayhana, was a nickname given to him, much like the name Al-Thaqafi was given to Al-Ḥakam bin Abil As al-Umawi. Now, of these, let's see what we got here. Okay, and now if we just look at this family that was created by the marriage of Bishr and Rayhana, we find a very interesting genealogy. Abu As, so Rayhana is from a very important tribe in the Quraysh, you know, the Banu Umayyad, and that marriage leads to the marriage of her son Abu As with Fatima bint Abdullah, and a big long list of genealogy had been Abdul Uzza bin Qusay bin Kilab. Well, Fatima actually was the granddaughter of somebody named Zama'a bin al-Aswad. Zama'a bin al-Aswad was he was a group of 5 people in pre-Islamic Mecca who helped the Banu Hashim break the famous boycott. So they had a boycott where the other clans in Mecca were boycotting the Banu Hashim over a trade dispute. And this led to a great deal of hardship on the Banu Hashim and the Banu Abdul Muttalib. And so her grandfather helped break that and was remembered and is remembered in Islamic sources in a very favorable light. So this marriage would have put that family in good stead with the Banu Hashim. And sure enough, their first son, Uthman, marries Khalida bint Abi Lahab. And Abu Lahab is one of the elders in the Banu Hashim. He's actually an opponent of the Prophet Muhammad. He's mentioned in the Quran, and he was a very hostile opponent to the Prophet Muhammad. But in pre-Islamic Arabia, he was an elder in the Banu Hashim, and that was an important marriage. So within a couple generations, they are now well connected to the Umayyads, and they're also well connected to the Banu Hashim. Plus, Khalida's mother is Arwa bint al-Harb. So Arwa bint al-Harb is the sister of Abu Sufyan, okay, the progenitor of the Sufyanids. So now this clan has got the trifecta. They've got the Banu Umayyad, they've got the Banu Hashim, and they got an in with the Banu Sufyan, Abu Sufyan. So, and that of course led to, dividends with the rise of the Prophet Muhammad. So what happens is, Abu Lahab, the enemy of the Prophet Muhammad, actually dies in the year 624, or shortly after the Battle of Badr. The Mecca is conquered in about 628. The Muslims go to Ta'if, and there's a parley, negotiations for the surrender of Ta'if. And originally Ta'if is quite hostile to the Prophet Muhammad. But Uthman is in the delegation that goes to negotiate with the Prophet Muhammad. And in those negotiations, he's the first one to embrace the Prophet Muhammad. And it's interesting because his father-in-law is dead. So the opposition of his father-in-law no longer matters. His mother-in-law is a sister of Abu Sufyan, who's already capitulated to Muhammad. The other members of the Banu Thaqif are from the other clan, which is more steadfast against Muhammad. They control the religious shrines. The Bedouin tribe on the outskirts of Ta'if, the Hawazin, have capitulated to Muhammad. So Uthman has an opportunity, and he seizes it, and he becomes a follower of Muhammad, and he helps persuade the rest of the Banu Thaqif to capitulate and surrender to the Muslims. And with that, Uthman becomes the governor of Ta'if, and he remains the governor through the caliphate of Omar. And after Uthman is the governor of Ta'if, Al-Ḥakam becomes the governor of Ta'if. And subsequently, you have Uthman, Al-Ḥakam, Al-Mughira, and Hafs taking control in Eastern Arabia, crossing over the Persian Gulf into Fars, and leading the first conquest in Fars for the Muslims, and then sailing into the Indian Ocean and making the first conquests of Sind and Hind for the Muslims. They are the veritable four musketeers of the early Muslim conquests. Subsequently, they cement their ties with the Sufyanids and Uthman's son Abdullah marries Al-Ḥakam, who is Abu Sufyan's daughter, and Abdullah wins an appointment to Kufa as governor of Kufa and then Egypt under Muawiyah. Or I'm sorry, his son Abdurrahman wins the appointments to Kufa and Egypt under Muawiyah. And you have another daughter, Muhammad, marries Sam bin Ziyad, and actually she becomes the first Arab woman to cross the Oxus into Central Asia. Al-Ḥakam has a son, Abd al-Malik. He also has a son, Yazid, who is a poet. Now, with the second fitna, their fortunes change, and they change for a lot of reasons. First of all, the Marwanids, they have, Marwan bin al-Ḥakam has like 30 children, about 17 sons. So he doesn't have the need for allies the way the Sufyanids did. The Abu Sufyan Muawiyah did not have very many children. The second thing is the Marwanids, they adopted Hajjaj bin Yusuf as their governor general for the East, and he was from the other branch of the Banu Thaqif. And the third thing was that the Banu Abil As were all located in Basra, and most of the Banu Thaqif were in Kufa. So their ties with their fellow tribesmen became attenuated. And anyways, we find that subsequently they disappear from political office. There remain important notables in the city of Basra. There are 4 sections of the city of Basra that are all named after the 4 brothers. One section is called Al-Uthmaniyya, and then Al-Ḥakamiyya, Al-Mughiriyya, and Al-Hafsiyya. And so they remain famous for a very long time. Okay, so this is just a summary of all the things that I just told you, the intermarriages and relationships, and with the Banu Hashim and the Banu. Now, for the reason why this is important, we have this legend here, Bismillah Rabb al-Ḥakam. Okay, and this is this legend, Bismillah Rabb al-Ḥakam, could be read 2 different ways. Could be read Rabb al-Ḥakam or Rabb al-Hukm, in which case we'd have the translation in the name of God, Lord of Al-Ḥakam, or the name of God, a Lord of Judgment. Ziyad bin Abi Sufyan previously had a legend, Bismillah Rabbi, in the name of God, my Lord. So it's very similar. They both use the word Rabb. And I would argue that they both have a similar political, religious perspective. So if you have the legend in the name of God, my Lord, and you're the governor, you're identifying God through your person. So when you talk to your subject people, you're saying in the name of God, my Lord. So you know God through me. okay? It's a vertical relationship. In the same way, if you say, in the name of God, the Lord of Al-Ḥakam, you are creating that same vertical relationship, okay? You're identifying God through the person of Al-Ḥakam. Now, if you say Reb al-Hukam, the Lord of Judgment, in the name of God, Lord of Judgment, well, the word Lord is at least anthropomorphic. It doesn't necessarily identify God through the ruler, but it does contain the nuance of God being anthropomorphic. The reason why this is important is when we get to Kharijite legends, we have La Hukm illa Allah. There is no judgment except by Allah or except by God. That presents a very impersonal view of God. There's nothing there that connects God with a human being or with the ruler. And so what you see here with these legends is kind of a certain progression where you have God identified with the ruler, God identified with the ruler, and perhaps judgment, but on a personal basis. And then in opposition to that, you have a God identified with an impersonal representation of judgment. And that represents a basic conflict during this period of time. And it progresses. And if you think of about 8 years after this, you get the legend Muhammad Rasulullah. You find that is now another progression. You say Muhammad Rasulullah, Muhammad is the messenger of God. You're now identifying right guidance through the person of Muhammad, while at the same time acknowledging Rasul as the Quran, as a somewhat of a, impersonal, it's God's word, it's impersonal, but it's through the person of Muhammad. He's the one who brings it down to the people. So, thank you.